Hello, everyone. It's my pleasure to moderate this awesome panel on how FinTechs can benefit from the multi-trillion-dollar female economy. Demographics, firmographics, psychographics all point to the same direction. Women are earning more, inheriting more, are more likely to get tertiary educational degrees, and indeed are starting businesses at greater rates than men. Women are also the chief purchasing officer in many households, and that includes deciding where to get financial services. And they buy not just for their nuclear family, but their elderly parents and beyond that. Tapping into the female economy is a huge opportunity for financial services providers because there are basically huge gaps in levels of satisfaction. So 75% of women globally report that they're dissatisfied with their banking services. 64% think that their investment advisor doesn't listen to them properly, as well as the plain access gap. So we're looking at a $1.7 trillion access gap in finance to women-owned led SMEs in emerging markets. And we also see a usage gap in financial services. For instance, women are much less likely to access the capital markets for their investments. The Financial Alliance for Women is a peer learning network of large financial services companies. And we recently did a piece of research into FinTechs and the female economy. We put that link to that into the chat so you can take a look at that. As a result of our research, which found a basic lack of awareness in the FinTech community around the opportunity of the female economy, we had a hackathon which posed certain challenges to unlock the value. This was along 4 tracks: financing very small enterprises, so solving for key barriers that semi-formal businesses face in accessing finance; wealth, so solving for mass market women's lack of access to investment products; also solving for rural women in Africa around payment solutions that really add value; and also InsurTech, supporting women SMEs to be adequately insured. Today, I'm very proud to moderate this incredible panel of entrepreneurs whose solutions were awarded first, second, and third prize in our hackathon as Female Economy FinTechs of the Year. Let me introduce you to, and if you could wave, Rachel Freeman from Tyme, Rhadica Bhachu from Ndovu, and Haniza Yon from GFI. So they are going to tell you about their solutions, and I'm going to ask them the first question here. There is a persistent gender gap in access and use of financial services across all segments: base of the pyramid, women-owned led VSEs and SMEs, mass market consumers, and even high net worth women. Can you share what your FinTech solution is solving for and how? We'll start with Rachel. Thank you.
Thank you, Inez, and we were really proud because we're the winner of the hackathon. So Tyme is a digital banking network. We work and create digital banks in emerging markets. Our largest deployment is in South Africa. It is called Tyme Bank, and we have 2.5 million customers. About 51% are women, and about 55% of our customers are active on a 30-day basis. We have an interesting approach to digital banking that's quite different from the digital banks that are in more developed markets. We believe that digital banking in developing markets is fundamentally different. First of all, we do not assume that our clients are digitally active and digitally savvy. They may use Facebook and social media, but that does not mean that they're comfortable about banking on their phones. So we meet people where they are in their journey. We have kiosks in grocery stores that onboard customers and provide a personalized debit card in under 3 minutes. In all of the cities in South Africa, through Pick and Pays and Boxer grocery stores. Secondly, we believe that in developing markets, people will only trust digital banks if there's a clear and easy way to access cash. Cash is still 95% of transactions in South Africa, in the Philippines, in Vietnam, across Southeast Asia. This means that you need to have an easy way to get in and out of cash. And we have enabled the till points in the grocery stores. So after you open your account, you can walk up to the till point and do cash in, cash out right when you're checking out and getting your groceries. This means that we're actually allowing people to bank where they shop and meeting them where they are in their lives rather than requiring them to learn new skills. And our third fundamental mantra is that people like people. We believe that digital means the back end, and that people actually like to engage with other people and learn from people about financial services in the front end. So we've installed ambassadors in the grocery stores, in Pick n Pay and Boxer across South Africa. Our ambassadors are not agents. They do not open the account for people, but they answer questions. They show how you download the app. They show you how to do savings products. What are the unique features of the accounts? And 70% of our ambassadors are women. These are young women who have never had a job before. They go through a special training program. And we believe one of the reasons we've done so well with women in South Africa, and particularly underserved women, is that they have the ambassadors so they can go back to time and again to learn more about their accounts.
Okay, great, Rachel. Can you tell us what you won the hackathon for?
So we won the hackathon for a really interesting approach with a partnership with a company called Jumper. So in South Africa, there are about 100,000 women micro entrepreneurs or sole proprietors, and many of these are selling across Instagram or Facebook Messenger or WhatsApp. While most people don't realize this is a booming business globally, and particularly in South Africa, but it's quite a fragmented business. So our solution is to partner with Jumper as a non-financial service. Jumper provides a digital storefront, sales and chatbots, abilities for these women to sell more of their products and sell them in a digital way, which is particularly important in the COVID period, then provides them logistics, delivery, payments, all of the functions to enable those businesses to sell more. By selling and partnering with Jumper, we are able to actually access greater data and improve our lending abilities to these women SMEs. So through our partnership with Jumper, they're getting access to finance, access to markets, access to new skills and tools to manage their businesses better. So we see this as an incredibly new way to reach women entrepreneurs in South Africa.
Thanks, Rachel. Really interesting. And I love the way the tie-in there is about presumably linking to sales data and inventory and so on, margins, so that you can actually make those lending decisions with people that formerly did not have that kind of credit history. Okay, moving on to Rhadica, please. Rhadica, can you share what your solution is and introduce your company?
Sure thing. Thank you, Inez. So Ndovu is a micro investment platform that provides easy access to financial markets. So, as Inez mentioned at the beginning, there's been a lot of research that shows that on average, women actually earn less than men, which means that they have less to spend, less to save, and even less for retirement. But then when you look across the spectrum of investment, it is also true that women actually invest less than their male counterparts, which actually leads to the concept of an investing gender gap. Now, that investing gender gap is more prevalent more globally. So when you look at the African continent where Ndovu has set off, actually the lack of investment is also prevalent in African men. So what Ndovu is doing, we did a bit more research to realize why is this the case? And the reason people save but don't invest is because they don't actually know where to start. So they need some education and advice. They who've tried investing actually find the process really complicated. They have to go into a typical fund manager, open 10 accounts, fill in 10 paperwork, open the account, and it takes over 2 weeks. And lastly, even if they wanted to invest, the minimum required to make an investment is quite high. So that overall puts them off the process. So what Ndovu does is that we provide advice. So you come onto our platform, we ask you a series of questions to really understand what is your ability to take risk, how long are you saving for, and are you saving towards a particular goal? So are you looking at saving for your children's education? Are you looking to buy a house? And what we find is that women actually tend to focus on these sort of items more from our research. So what we do is we've actually have some significant partnerships with women-based entities, such as business communities, so that we can ensure that we can educate these women and also help them along their investment journey, so they're investing in order to create a better financial future for their families.
Thanks, Rhadica. And just tell us a little bit, because obviously you don't want to put any of these important savings at risk. What are the actual investment products?
Yeah, so we're starting off with mutual funds, which are, so you can buy a mutual fund that is exposed to equity, exposed to bonds, and a cash mutual fund. Now, these products are all based locally, but we are speaking to providers to provide global access, because naturally, if you hold a portfolio that is exposed to different regions, we bring down the overall risk of that portfolio, which means that our women and other customers on the platform will be able to experience a better return and and move closer to their goal at a much faster rate because they're running less risk.
Excellent. And so this is such an important product or business, because so many African women put all their savings into banks, and it's not a good use of their money. And if they're not putting it into banks, they're literally burying it in the ground in plastic bags to protect it from fires and so on. So there's a lot of excess capital there that could be used for better purposes, and this is a fabulous initiative. We'll get back to you in a minute, Rhadica, but let's move on to Haniza from GFI, who found a solution to support women access finance.
Well, our solution is called GFI, which is a psychometric credit risk assessment system developed for the underserved market segment, where borrowers answer a series of psychometric questions, which takes on average like 5 to 6 minutes for them to complete. Yeah. There are GFI design features that women found to be particularly useful to them. And these features are such as the user interface is in the 3 main vernacular, which enable women who are not schooled in English to answer the questions. And we also use pictures to convey instructions and meanings. In order to make sure that assessment is not biased, because as you know, some of the questions may be biased for certain gender. So we remove gender biases in the questions, even at the development stage. And the assessment is also done online. So micro entrepreneurs do not have to leave their market stall or shops or the city of their homes in order to go to the bank. Community agents, yes, community agents are also made available to assist those who are not digitally savvy. GFI also provide, GFI is more, it assesses a borrower's entrepreneurial capacity and identifies areas for improvement. This feature resonates very well with female borrowers. That was what we found, because female borrowers are very interested in the reports that would give them suggestions on how to improve their entrepreneurial potential.
Really interesting, Haniza. And of course, you know, what you've heard from the 3 speakers is this combination of financial and non-financial services is key, as well as the combination of technology and touch, right? So it's not that you can serve the female economy simply digitally. You do need, particularly for segments of the population that aren't fully digitized yet, you do need that kind of personal touch to get involved. Let's move on now to the, you know, the hackathon itself. And I'm just curious, what impact did it have on your thinking and your company's strategy? Anybody can answer.
All right. So Inez, I mean, I think when we looked at and worked on the hackathon, it enabled us to go deep into our data and the power of sex disaggregated data. So in part of the hackathon, we looked at the usage of accounts and saw that women in South Africa are using our accounts in much smarter ways than men. And they're using the more value-oriented products that we designed to be used more, whereas men are using products that are much more expensive that actually we would prefer not to be used, such as other banks' ATMs, whereas women use our send money and our cash deposits at the till point products much more. So this enabled us to start thinking, what are other products and how can we slant to push other product usage to increase activity rates? So the hackathon had a really incredible impact, first of all, on improving our activity rates, and then enabling us to further develop products and services across the scope of Tyme Bank's products in South Africa.
Yeah, thanks, Rachel. And I'd just like to point our viewers to the FinTech report that's in the chat function. And what that found was that, you know, well over 70% of FinTechs that reported to that survey actually did have sex disaggregated consumer data on their customers, but very few were looking at it and analyzing it, looking at usage patterns, etc. And so through the research process, what we noticed was that many of the people we interviewed at the beginning of the research, it kind of started them thinking, and then they started looking at the data. And once they started looking at the data, they were identifying new solutions, new marketing strategies, etc. So I think the data piece is huge if the FinTech sector is to understand how to serve women better. Would anybody else like to comment, Rhadica or Haniza, on the impact of the hack?
Well, I must admit that when we initially started developing GFI as a product, we did not focus on a gender specific. So it was GFI was initially a general product, mainly because of limited availability of data. Our immediate impact of winning the hack is that it has emboldened us to highlight the ability of our solution to reach and grow the female market. Yeah? And we also now give more emphasis on our data on women to further strengthen our marketing strategy. And I'm also happy to inform that GFI is now being used exclusively to assess the women product in one of our lender clients. So that is, you know, the impact of the hackathon really changed our perspective and also refine our solution. So now we see the importance of, you know, addressing the female group.
Excellent.
Of making it a gender-free. Yeah.
That's great news, Haniza. And you know, it's the beginning of the journey. I think, you know, as you're looking at these female pilots and so on, you'll get even better data and presumably refine and scale.
Yes.
That's fantastic. What about you, Rhadica? What impact do you think?
Yeah, so I think exactly leveraging what the women said. So definitely not just looking at the data, but one thing that is more qualitative that I think had an impact was actually the network. So what this hackathon allowed us to do was listen to entrepreneurs and females who are looking to implement female strategic decisions to acquire more women in different ways. And so, for example, hearing people's stories, like, for example, Rachel's company Tyme really not just focus on putting foot soldiers, but they actually have foot soldiers who teach the audience how to use their product and really understand what their solution can really benefit them. What we are looking to do eventually is also, in order to target the bottom of the pyramid, is have foot soldiers at particular stations, but really taking the insight of what really worked well for Tyme and being able to incorporate that into our strategies and invaluable insights that we couldn't have achieved without being part of the hackathon. So I think that was really a really good way to have a women network that you can bounce ideas off and get feedback on.
Absolutely, thank you. And I think, you know, obviously as an alliance, a peer learning alliance, we are looking actually to creating a community of FinTechs that are interested in focusing on the female economy so that we can share amongst ourselves about how to do that and really make this give it the weight that it deserves. I mean, let's face it, women are 51% of the population, but there also happen to be more represented in the unbanked and underbanked community. All right, so let's move on now to a question that I love to ask, which is, if you had a magic wand, what two things would each of you like to see to make the FinTech sector in general become more gender intelligent?
So Inez, I mean, I think if you look at, I mean, one of the other aspects of the hackathon did for Tyme was really wake up Tyme on this issue, where kind of financial inclusion has always been in the DNA of Tyme, and it's very important to us. But I think that the women's market and the women's segment was more of a theoretical than an active pursuit. And so the hackathon did that. And by having kind of a champion in Tyme who was looking at this issue and has been a proponent of this issue, made a big difference. This is why I think it's quite important to have champions at the senior level and have more women in senior level positions at FinTechs and also on the board and in the funders of FinTechs. So startups are very focused on getting their products out, but also raising the money to stay in business. And having funders that are looking and talking about this issue is one of the kind of magic wand things that I think is very important to change the dial, or move the dial.
Yep. So the whole diversity piece. Thank you. Let's hear from Rhadica. You're a female founder, and you know, that diversity thing seems to be very important in terms of, we know that less than 2% of VC globally goes to women founders, women-founded companies. Is that even more severe in the fintech space, do you think?
So I think yes. You know, looking at the flow of money, especially across the African continent in different sectors, a lot of sectors that see a lot of flow is agriculture, because it's quite big on the continent. We have seen more in the fintech space, but for the women-focused fintech businesses, that's more on the left side. So I echo Rachel's point of having a magic wand to help us grow and really focus on the female economy, which leads to a lot of positive, not just impact, but also from a revenue perspective, because women are more committed and focused, especially on the African continent, on growing and making their families a better financially stable family. And I think that would be really great to see. But another thing in terms of a magic wand I'd love to see is see the local financial traditional players. So these would be people like the banks, investment advisors, the regulators, really bring initiatives that help and support females along their investment journey. Because as startups, we're working in that direction. We're increasing education. We're trying to do the right thing. But if there was more support, more widely across the ecosystem, I think we could achieve a lot and have significantly more impact in improving the female economy when it comes to investing.
Yeah, I mean, I always think Africa is the most crazy example, because in terms of why there's not more focus on the female economy and female entrepreneurs, because they actually run well over 50% of the small businesses. They are primarily the person in the household responsible for the household finances in many, many countries. And yet there seems to be some kind of myopia or on the part of financial services providers, or they're kind of put into a box of being micro and small and not really worthy. When in fact, if you look at what they are actually investing in, they do have a lot of money and they are investing in different things, but they're very limited. They're limited to investing in property, building houses and so on, but not in any way hedged, if you like, against other. So you're saying to kind of get the ecosystem more primed up, create that awareness. But I think it's more than awareness, actually. I think it's, do you know what I mean? Like there has to be funding earmarked, or something there has to be more incentive in the system, I think. What do you think?
Exactly. Grants or, tax benefits, things like that, even for local businesses to support women-led focused businesses, there should be a tax benefit. I mean, I'd love to see something like that come through, but unfortunately, that's not at the forefront of the local government at this stage.
Yeah. Okay, let's hear from Haniza. So completely different market and culture. What is your perspective on the magic wand here?
Okay, so if I had a magic wand, I wish, as a data analytic tech company, I wish to see the availability of more sex disaggregated market data, even in Asia, and also successful use cases so that we can utilize them to further strengthen our product development and marketing. That's my first wish. My second wish is I wish for more women founders and women working in fintech. It will also be great to see a proactive public-private sector partnership program to use, capacitate, and incentivize more women techpreneurs in Malaysia. So that's, that is the second one is actually my first wish.
Okay, so this idea of the incentive system. Yeah. Let's dig deeper. I mean, what kind of incentives do you think would work?
You see that it can be in different forms. It can be in the form of mentoring, grants, grants for development purpose. I think number one would be the mentoring, which is scarce, and especially for women techpreneurs.
Okay.
Yeah.
Rachel, what is your feeling on the incentive front?
I actually, if you go back to boards, I know that I think a couple countries in Europe have instituted requirements for companies or listed companies to definitely have women on boards. And so while I didn't used to be in favor of quotas, I've actually changed my mind on this in the last kind of year, and think that things like that are actually useful to move forward the idea of women on more influence and having at a higher level that type of influence. I do think, there are lots of different ideas about women in terms of funding and offering of guarantees for when they're women, and I think that those types of incentives are also quite interesting. So like if you provide banks bank funding, that if they're lending to women, they get step downs with interest rates. I actually think that those types of mechanisms work as well. But I do think it's going to be hard to do some things like tax incentives with women, because the measuring of that can be quite challenging.
Well, I'm just doing, I can tell you that in Europe, the situation is it's now mandated to have 30% of the board be female by, I think it's 2025, of all public companies. And interesting, you should say that in the country that I'm sitting in, which is Ireland, the major banks got interested in the work that the Alliance do because of that mandate, because they were like, okay, we've got to sort this out. And what we know is our research shows, and we've just done a whole guide to how do you become more gender diverse as a company from the frontline staff up through the board. We know that there's a strong correlation between diversity internally and the capacity to execute on the women's market, and vice versa, right? So diversity of all types is very important, and usually you start off with the gender piece, and then you move on to other categories of humans. But it's a really, really important piece, and I think we've got to move. So Rachel said at the beginning, that she came into Tyme and she was the first really senior female in Tyme, and it was her interest in that. And time and again, we do see this, that it's the champion. And it doesn't have to be a female, but more often than not, at the beginning, it is actually a female that becomes the champion or is the champion for this, and can really transform the company as an entrepreneur. So, this agenda is extremely important if we want the sector to really deliver what it's promising, which is essentially to democratize access to financial services for all. Any other comments? I don't see any questions in the chat, so I'd like to finish. We've 2 minutes left. I'd like to do a round robin with the panelists. Is there one last thing you'd like to share?
I guess just to respond to what you said, Inez, that I think it's not just the diversity lends to the bottom line, that every report that comes out shows that if you have a more diverse workforce, if you have a more diverse board, that is going to lend and increase the bottom line. And I think that one of the key messages always, when you think about the women's segment, is that this is not charity and this is not corporate social responsibility, but this is a way to increase the long-term value of the customers, because women are sticky customers, and they're going to lend itself to a more profitable financial institution if you have women customers and are serving them well.
Yes, thanks, Rachel. And some of the data that's now coming out in the business case shows how strong women are as customers. Rhadica, I'm conscious that what is the one thing your business needs to scale before we sign off here?
So I think what we need to scale is, for us, is twofold. One is being able to educate our users in a very simple, easy way to do that. And we've done a lot of product testing. And again, a lot of our pilot and product testing has been done with women. And we know the simplicity is key, and we've nailed that. And secondly is just funding. So being able to make sure that we're able to grow at a 7% month-on-month rate. And that's basically what we're looking to do so far. Okay,
so all you investors on the line here, get in touch with Rhadica. And Haniza, you've got the final word. What do you need to scale?
Well, I would like to scale in terms of lenders, in terms of the system, and then get more lenders to experience, to trust credit scoring, alternative credit scoring, so that we'll be able to prove the effectiveness.
Excellent. Okay. So all you lenders out there that are looking for ways to lower the cost and the ability to underwrite those loans, please get in touch with Haniza. Well, thank you very much, everybody. We're very honored to be at the SFF, and we appreciate your interest in this topic. Please go online, www.financialallianceforwomen.org. You'll find a lot of resources there. And thank you, panelists. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Inez.